Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Midnight Slow Burn Stories podcast. An original Koi Rue production, all rights reserved.
The invitation. The mailbox gaped, spilling forth a cascade of bills and flyers. Leo rummaged through the unwanted paper, his hand discovering a sturdier, silkier texture. Creamy cardstock, gold tendrils, an elaborate monogram pressed into the surface. A jolt ran through him. The familiar, elegant penmanship. Maya. His pulse quickened, a frantic tattoo against his ribs. He tore at the seal, the fine paper resisting his haste. Within, cushioned by layers of tissue, lay the announcement. Maya Eleanor Thorne and Charles Alastair Finch request the honor. The words swam before him. The date, the hour, the venue, some opulent estate upstate, usually glimpsed only in glossy magazines, barely registered. Only her name held his gaze, echoing in the chambers of his heart like a forgotten melody. He leaned against the building's brick facade, the setting sun painting long shadows around him. Maya, had it truly been 15 years? More, perhaps, since words had passed between them. Since the unraveling, a dizzy spell hit him, a swift current pulling him back to another life, another world. A sun-drenched shore, the briny air sharp and clean. He was a boy, 8 or 9, small hands molding wet sand. Maya, pigtails swinging, eyes bright with impish glee, stood beside him, carefully constructing a sandcastle wall. It needs a moat, Leo. Every proper castle does. He recalled the gritty feel of the sand, the sun's warmth on his skin, the simple, boundless joy of creation. That summer unfolded in elaborate fortifications, battles against imagined beasts, kingdoms sculpted from sand. Maya, the intrepid ruler, and Leo, her steadfast guardian. He shook his head, tried to dispel the vision, the sharp stab of yearning that came with it. Childhood games, mere sandcastles. Yet, even then, a sense of Maya's singular nature had resonated within him, a quiet brilliance. The invitation felt weighty in his palm, a tangible representation of years of unspoken sentiments, opportunities unrealized. He ascended the stairs to his apartment, the card clutched tightly. Inside, he dropped it onto the cluttered kitchen table, lost among overdue notices and abandoned projects. He circled it cautiously, like an animal approaching a snare. To go or not to go? The question reverberated in his thoughts, a persistent drone. Attendance would be excruciating. Witnessing her, radiant and fulfilled, marrying another. Someone who wasn't him. Someone who had captured a prize he'd never dared to pursue. A vivid tableau of his own shortcomings, the unspoken words that defined him. He envisioned the event. Manicured lawns, formally attired guests, saccharine toasts, plastered smiles. He saw himself, a solitary figure in the periphery, cradling a tepid flute of champagne, observing Maya from a distance, a relic of her past. But absence felt even worse. Cowardice, an admission of failure, as if he could deny that she had once been the axis around which his world revolved. He couldn't simply dismiss their shared history, no matter how desperately he wished to. She was far more than a name on an advertisement. He walked to the window, gazing at the cityscape, distant lights blinking like scattered jewels. What would her reaction be if he failed to appear? Would she even register his absence? Unlikely. He was simply Leo, unassuming, quiet Leo, the boy of sandcastles. He recalled her laughter, the crow's feet that appeared when she grinned, her unwavering support, even when he was undeserving. The stilted final phone call before her departure for college flashed through his mind, a conversation punctuated by awkward pauses and veiled farewells. Closing his eyes, the image of Maya, vibrant and young, seared itself deeper into his memory. He owed it to her, he realized with sudden clarity. He owed it to himself, too. He needed to see her. This one last time. Lifting the invitation, his fingers traced the gilded design. He would go. He would confront the symphony, no matter how discordant. He would bear witness to her joy, even if it meant his own heart shattered into a million pieces. He reached for his laptop, his cursor hovering over the RSVP button. He clicked attending. A grand affair. The Huntington estate loomed, a monstrous monument to old money and impeccable landscaping. Leo felt the threadbare patch on his rented tuxedo jacket dig into his shoulder. He tried to convince himself it wasn't noticeable, but now, standing amidst a sea of designer gowns and bespoke suits, it felt like a neon sign proclaiming his outsider status. Valets whisked cars away with practiced ease, their movements precise and silent. Leo, however, parked his battered Corolla half a block away, opting for the discretion is the better part of valor approach. He smoothed down his hair, took a deep breath, and walked toward the cacophony of string music and polite laughter emanating from the manicured gardens. The wedding was, in a word, extravagant. White roses cascaded from every conceivable surface, their scent almost cloying in its intensity. Miniature ice sculptures of swans adorned the buffet tables, glistening under the warm afternoon sun. Guests, a mix of impeccably dressed socialites and stern-faced business tycoons, mingled with practiced ease, their conversations a low hum of privilege and power. Champagne, flutes glittered, reflecting the light in a dizzying display of wealth. Leo felt a pang of something, not quite envy, but perhaps a weary recognition of the chasm that separated him from this world. He scanned the crowd, a knot forming in his stomach. He knew only a handful of people, mostly distant relatives of the groom, who'd likely forgotten his name years ago. He grabbed a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter, the bubbles tickling his nose, and retreated to the edge of the garden, hoping to blend into the meticulously trimmed hedges. Then he saw her, Maya. She stood beneath a wrought iron archway draped in wisteria, the afternoon sun catching the gold threads woven into her intricate updo. Her dress, a frothy confection of ivory silk and lace, seemed to float around her. She was even more breathtaking than he remembered, a vision of ethereal beauty. But it was her eyes that caught him, held him captive. They were the same vibrant emerald green he remembered from childhood, but now they held a depth, a sadness that tugged at something deep inside him. She was smiling, yes, a radiant smile that could launch 1,000 ships, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. It felt forced, rehearsed. She was surrounded by well-wishers, a cluster of impeccably dressed women showering her with compliments. Leo watched, mesmerized, as she gracefully navigated the social niceties, her laughter tinkling like wind chimes. But he couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a part, a role she'd been meticulously trained for. He took a hesitant step forward, then stopped. What was he doing? He was just Leo Maxwell, the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, the boy who used to build her sandcastles on the beach. He didn't belong here, didn't belong near her. But then her eyes met his. Just for a fleeting moment, across the crowded garden, their gazes locked. Her smile faltered, just imperceptibly, and a flicker of something, recognition, surprise, crossed her face. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by the practiced poise of the bride. She turned back to her guests, her laughter echoing across the garden. But Leo couldn't shake the feeling that he'd seen something real, something vulnerable, beneath the surface. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within him, that this grand affair was not all that it seemed. And he knew, just as surely, that he couldn't simply disappear back into the hedges. He had to talk to her. Across the room, the cathedral loomed, a cavernous space that amplified the solitude he felt. Leo watched Maya process toward Charles, a vision draped in ivory silk. Charles, ramrod straight, waited with a practiced smile. Leo sought Maya's gaze, that familiar depth he'd known since childhood, a fragility at odds with her composed demeanor. He scanned for a flicker of unease, a tremor of doubt, but found only what appeared to be perfect composure. Yet those eyes, they snagged his briefly, a wordless exchange that resonated like a shared secret. The reception was a dizzying blur of clinking crystal, brittle laughter, and a shimmering spectacle of chandeliers. The Huntington estate had morphed into an extravagant fantasy, a string quartet weaving melodies that struggled to rise above the polite drone of conversation. Leo, cornered by a distant relative and a table groaning with dainty hors d'oeuvres, endured a monologue about pedigree poodles. He fabricated an excuse, desperate for air, and weaved through the throng, his gaze ever returning to Maya. She was the nucleus of the ballroom, a radiant presence around which orbits of family and acquaintances revolved. Charles, glued to her side, kept a possessive hand at her back. He intercepted whispers, responded with exaggerated mirth, constantly vying for the spotlight. Leo observed the subtle hardening of Maya's expression, the almost imperceptible tension in her shoulders. Later, as the band shifted to a lively beat, the dance floor teemed. Leo watched Maya swirl in Charles's embrace, her gown blossoming around her like a cumulus cloud. A sharp twinge, a tangled knot of longing and regret, twisted in his chest. He'd squandered his chance years ago, failing to stake his claim. Now, she belonged to Charles, unequivocally. Then a shift. In mid-song, Maya's gaze swept the crowd, finding his across the room. This time, the carefully constructed serenity vanished. Her eyes widened, a raw, desperate current surging between them. A plea? A silent question? He couldn't decipher it, but the intensity was undeniable. His pulse quickened, a frantic rhythm echoing the music's tempo. He found himself moving almost against his will, navigating the dancers, his focus locked on her. Reaching the edge of the floor, he could discern Charles's affected laughter, the tautness around Maya's eyes as she responded. Again, their eyes met. This time, Maya's gaze flickered toward a shadowy corridor leading away from the swirling lights. A subtle, almost imperceptible gesture, yet Leo understood. An invitation? A silent SOS? He couldn't be sure, but he couldn't ignore it. He started towards the hallway, then stalled, feigning interest in a floral display. Drawing a steadying breath, he fought for composure. This was lunacy. She was married to Charles Huntington, but the memory of her eyes, that unguarded moment of vulnerability, seared itself into his memory. A glance back revealed Maya and Charles still entwined, but her eyes remained fixed on him, a silent inquiry hanging between them. He turned and walked towards the hallway. The hidden library. Leo felt the hum of the reception thrumming in his chest, a frantic beat against the backdrop of forced smiles and polite conversation. He caught Maya's eye across the crowded ballroom. A silent plea seemed to pass between them. She gave a barely perceptible nod. "Excuse me," Leo mumbled to the cluster of distant relatives he'd been cornered by, backing away slowly. He spotted Maya near the ornate dessert table, pretending to admire a tower of macarons. "Ready for a tactical retreat?" he asked, his voice low. Maya turned, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "Desperate for one. Follow me." She led him through a series of increasingly deserted corridors, the sounds of the party fading with each turn. The air grew cooler, dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight that pierced through grimy windows. Finally, she stopped before a heavy oak door, its surface unadorned and seemingly untouched for decades. "I used to play hide-and-seek here when I was little," she said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "Nobody ever thinks to look behind this door." She pushed it open with surprising ease, revealing a darkened room. The scent of old paper and leather filled the air, a comforting aroma that spoke of forgotten stories and hushed whispers. It was a library, though one clearly neglected. Books lined the walls, their spines faded and cracked, their pages brittle with age. Dust lay thick on every surface, coating the furniture and obscuring the details of the room. "Wow," Leo breathed, stepping inside. "I never knew this was here." Maya wandered further into the room, running her fingers along the spines of the books. "It's been closed off for years, I think. The Sterling family's dirty little secret. They value profit over prose." She stopped before a towering bookshelf, her expression thoughtful. Remember how we used to make up stories together? About knights and dragons, and princesses trapped in towers. Leo chuckled, the sound echoing in the silent room. And you always insisted on being the knight, rescuing me, the damsel in distress. Maya laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound that warmed him from the inside out. Someone had to keep you out of trouble. You were always getting lost in the woods, chasing after squirrels. A comfortable silence settled between them as they explored the library, each lost in their own memories. Leo noticed a small, intricately carved wooden desk tucked away in a corner. He ran his hand across its dusty surface, imagining the countless hours someone had spent writing there. "It's funny," Maya said, breaking the silence. "We used to dream of grand adventures, of escaping this small town. And now, here we are." "Yeah," Leo replied, turning to face her. "You certainly escaped. Big city lawyer, marrying into this." He gestured around the room, encompassing the opulent estate and, perhaps, the gilded cage of Maya's life. A shadow crossed Maya's face. "Escaped is one word for it. Sometimes I feel like I'm acting a part, playing the role of the perfect socialite wife. It's exhausting." "I always thought you were fearless," Leo admitted, "that you had it all figured out." Maya shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "Nobody has it all figured out, Leo. Especially not me. What about you? Still dreaming of becoming a writer?" Leo hesitated. "Trying. I have a job, pays the bills. The writing, it's harder than I thought. Rejection letters pile up faster than completed chapters." He felt a familiar wave of self-doubt wash over him. "Don't give up," Maya said, her voice firm. "You always had a gift for words. You painted pictures with them. Don't let that fade." She stepped closer, her gaze intense. "Don't let anything fade." The air crackled with unspoken emotions, with the weight of shared history and the tantalizing possibility of something more. The hum of the reception, muffled as it was, seemed to pulse with a new urgency, a reminder of the world outside this hidden sanctuary. Leo reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. A sudden, sharp click echoed from the doorway. They both froze, pulling away from each other as if burned. "Hello," Maya called out, her voice trembling slightly. Silence. Leo held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Had someone heard them? Seen them? The click came again, louder this time, followed by the faint sound of shuffling footsteps retreating down the corridor. Maya swallowed hard, her eyes wide with apprehension. "We should go," she whispered. "Now." A moment of weakness. A faint pulse of music vibrated through the library's oak door, a hushed thrum against the sudden stillness that enveloped them. Maya had ushered him in, claiming a need for respite from the camera's glare and the relentless charade of smiles. He'd followed, lured like a moth to a fragile candle. Inside, the air hung thick with the aroma of aged paper and softened leather, a distinct departure from the sugary residue of wedding cake that clung to his palate. By the window, Maya stood bathed in the amber light of the late afternoon, the gold embroidery of her extravagant gown catching the light, transforming her into a gilded figure. "It's quite the wedding," Leo offered, the words sounding tinny even to his own ears. She pivoted, the smile she presented feeling brittle, devoid of the genuine warmth he remembered from years gone by. "Isn't it? Everything a girl is supposed to want." The words lacked inflection, betraying not a glimmer of bridal joy. He resisted the urge to reach out, to smooth the etched lines of worry bracketing her eyes, keeping his hands firmly planted. Years had intervened, lives unfolded, and she was no longer the carefree girl he'd once climbed trees alongside. She belonged to another now. "Are you happy, Maya?" The question escaped him, a reckless act against the day's carefully constructed artifice. Her eyes flickered, a transient flash of vulnerability piercing the surface. "Happy?" Such a loaded word, Leo. A clipped laugh escaped her, a sound that didn't reach her gaze. "I possess all the trappings. Security, position." Her voice trailed off, her gaze drifting towards the precisely sculpted gardens beyond the window. Drawn by an unseen force, he moved closer, The space crackled with unspoken sentiment, the weight of shared history and paths not taken. But not happiness. He completed for her, his voice barely audible. She offered no reply, but her wide, luminous eyes locked with his. In that instant, the intervening years dissolved, and he glimpsed the Maya he knew. Scraped knees, infectious laughter, the girl who once held his hand beneath a canopy of summer fireflies. He recognized the impropriety. He understood the transgression. Yet, the pull was irresistible, the longing too deeply ingrained. He reached out, his fingertips tracing the curve of her cheek. Skin like the velvet of a rose petal. Her breath caught. He observed the conflict play out in her eyes, the internal struggle between obligation and yearning. Then, she bridged the gap. A tentative brush of lips, gaining confidence, becoming insistent. It was a kiss steeped in years of unvoiced desire, the burden of what might have been. He tasted the faint effervescence of champagne mingling with the saline tang of unshed tears. The world swam, the music receded, and it was only Maya, her body a warm pressure against his, her heart mirroring his frantic rhythm. The kiss broke with jarring abruptness. Maya recoiled, a hand flying to cover her mouth, her expression a mask of horror. "Oh God," she breathed, the words edged with panic. "What have I done?" Leo felt the color drain from his features. The gravity of his actions descended, suffocating him with remorse and shame. He had violated her trust, wronged her husband, betrayed his own principles. "Maya, he started, but she silenced him with a sharp shake of her head. "Don't," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Just don't utter a word." She turned away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "This never occurred, Leo. Do you understand? Never." She bolted from the library, leaving him alone with the ghost of their stolen moment and the crushing weight of his regret. The music swelled, a mocking chorus to his moment of weakness, a stark reminder of the celebration continuing outside, a celebration he had sullied with his own reckless passions. He sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. The scent of aged volumes offered no solace, only a grim reminder of the history he had irrevocably altered, a narrative now marred by culpability and remorse. Watching eyes. The champagne tasted like ashes in Leo's mouth. He swirled it, pretending to admire the endless procession of bubbles, but his gaze kept flicking towards Maya. She was radiant, a vision in white, laughing at something Charles had said. Charles, the man who held her hand, who would be waking up next to her tomorrow. The thought was a jagged shard in Leo's chest. He tried to focus on Mrs. Abernathy recounting the intricacies of her prize-winning roses, but his mind kept replaying their stolen moments. The feel of Maya's hand in his, the desperate whisper of promises in the hidden room. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. Acting normal was proving to be an Olympic sport he was woefully unprepared for. Aren't they just the happiest couple? Mrs. Abernathy chirped, nudging him with an elbow. Leo forced a smile. Indeed, he excused himself, needing air, needing to escape the suffocating weight of the reception. He wandered towards the edge of the manicured lawns, the distant strains of the string quartet a melancholic backdrop to his inner turmoil. That's when he saw him. Arthur Finch. He stood beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, a shadow among shadows. Arthur was a former employee of Charles, someone who had been unceremoniously dismissed a few years back. Leo remembered hearing whispers of embezzled funds, but nothing had ever been proven. Arthur's face, already sharp and angular, seemed even more gaunt, his eyes narrowed into slits. He was watching, his gaze fixed intently on the reception, on Maya and Charles. Leo felt a chill crawl up his spine. It wasn't just observation, it was predatory. He quickly averted his gaze, pretending to be engrossed in the meticulously arranged flower beds. After a moment, he chanced another glance. Arthur was gone. Had he imagined it? Was he just projecting his own guilt and paranoia? He rubbed his temples, tried to dispel the unease. He needed to get a grip. He decided to head back inside, to mingle, to try and appear as if nothing was amiss. The ballroom was a kaleidoscope of swirling colors and forced gaiety. He spotted Maya near the buffet table, her laughter tinkling like wind chimes. He started towards her, then hesitated. Better to keep his distance. As he turned away, he bumped into a waiter carrying a tray of canapes. A small, folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. "Sorry, sir," the waiter mumbled, hurrying on. Leo bent down to pick it up. It was plain white, unmarked. He unfolded it, his heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. 3 words were scrawled in harsh, block letters. "I saw you." The blood drained from his face. He looked around wildly, searching for any sign of Arthur, but the crowd was a blur of unfamiliar faces. The music seemed to warp and distort, the laughter turning into a mocking echo. He clutched the note in his trembling hand, crumpling it into a tight ball. He had to get out of there. Now, he muttered an excuse to a passing acquaintance and made his way towards the exit, the 3 words burning in his mind like a brand. He needed to talk to Maya, to warn her, but the thought of exposing their secret sent another wave of panic washing over him. Outside, the air was thick with the scent of roses, but it offered no solace. He felt trapped, exposed, like a fly caught in a spider's web. Someone knew, and they were watching. The revelation. Arthur Finch sipped his lukewarm champagne, the bubbles doing little to soothe the burning in his gut. He'd positioned himself near the back of the marquee, a strategic vantage point overlooking the meticulously arranged tables and the throng of well-wishers. Charles Huntington, the groom, stood at the head table, radiating charm. Arthur's lip curled. Charm was a weapon in Charles's arsenal, one he wielded with ruthless precision. Leo Maxwell, the best man, cleared his throat, tapping the microphone. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Leo, Charles's best friend since, well, forever. I've known Charles since we were kids building ridiculous forts in the woods. Back then, even covered in mud and leaves, you could tell he was destined for greatness." Leo's voice, amplified through the speakers, was filled with genuine warmth. He launched into a series of light-hearted anecdotes, each one painting Charles as the epitome of success and charisma. Arthur clenched his fist. This saccharine performance was unbearable. He took another swig of champagne, the bitter taste doing little to quench his rising fury. He had waited long enough. Leo was mid-sentence. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I'm incredibly proud to stand here today and raise a glass to Charles and Maya. May your life together be filled with joy, laughter, and stolen opportunities. Arthur's voice cut through the air, sharp and jarring. Every head in the marquee swiveled in his direction. The music falter died. An uncomfortable silence descended, thick and heavy. Charles's face, previously beaming, darkened. "Arthur, what are you doing here?" Arthur ignored him, his gaze fixed on Maya. Her expression was a mask of confusion and dawning horror. Charles is a master of illusion, isn't he? He presents this image of success, of integrity. But behind that facade, he paused, letting the suspense build. Behind that facade lies a trail of broken promises and ruined lives. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Leo, his face pale, stepped forward. "Arthur, you're drunk. This isn't the time or the place." "Drunk?" Arthur laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "I wish I were. Then maybe I wouldn't remember how Charles systematically siphoned funds from Huntington Enterprises, how he framed me when the auditors started sniffing around." Charles's composure finally cracked. "That's a lie. He was embezzling. I had proof. Proof you fabricated." Arthur countered, his voice rising. "You needed a scapegoat, and I was conveniently expendable." He turned back to Maya, his voice softening slightly. "Maya, you deserve to know the truth. This man isn't who you think he is." The marquee erupted. Guests began whispering, pointing, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. A woman gasped loudly. Others began recording with their phones. Maya stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief, darting between Charles and Arthur. The carefully constructed image of her perfect wedding day was shattering around her. She looked at Charles, searching for answers, for reassurance. Charles, his face flushed, stormed towards Arthur, his fists clenched. "Get out. You're ruining everything." Leo intervened, grabbing Charles's arm. "Charles, stop. Don't make this worse." "Worse?" Charles roared, shaking Leo off. "He's already ruined it." Arthur stood his ground, a grim satisfaction etched on his face. He had planted the seed of doubt, and he knew it would fester. He looked at Maya one last time, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, before turning and walking out of the marquee, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos and shattered illusions. The scent of roses and expensive perfume was now tainted with the acrid smell of suspicion. Taking the fall, the library air crackled with accusation, a silent storm brewing. Charles, his features twisted in a mask of rage, appeared on the verge of implosion. Maya, a statue carved from fear, seemed ready to crumble. "Leave her out of this, Charles," Leo rasped, the words ripped raw from his throat. He moved between them, a bulwark against the impending explosion. "It was me. I was the instigator, the one who pushed things." The ensuing quiet felt absolute, a vacuum sucking up all sound. The blood seemed to thicken in Charles's veins, staining his complexion a furious red. "You? That's a load of garbage." He spat the insult like poison. "You're supposed to be my best man, Leo, my wingman." Leo held his gaze, unflinching, resolute. "I am being your best man, Charles. Can't you comprehend? Maya is blameless in this. She was vulnerable, yes, and I exploited that." He loathed the phrase, its connotations, but it served a purpose, a defense for Maya. Charles advanced, fists bunched tight. "Vulnerable? That's your justification? She's about to become my wife. You think you can just stroll in here and declare what, exactly? Seduction? That she's some damsel in distress." He flung a hand towards Maya, who recoiled. "Enough, Charles," Leo retorted, his own control snapping. "Don't demean her like that. She possesses more worth than you can imagine. Perhaps that's the crux of the matter." His words hung like lead weights. Charles flinched, as if struck by an unseen blow. "What's that supposed to suggest?" Leo sighed, raking a hand through his already mussed hair. "Just reflect, Charles. You've been so consumed by this wedding, the Huntington legacy, by everything else that you've failed to truly see Maya, not the person she truly is." Charles's eyes narrowed, a different expression flickering across them. Bewilderment, perhaps, or the first tendrils of doubt. "And you have? You deciphered the real Maya in what? A stolen moment amongst the bookshelves?" "I saw someone trapped," Leo countered, his tone gentler. He risked a glance at Maya. Her eyes glistened, threatening to spill over. Someone yearning to escape. A shift occurred, the tangible tension loosening, replaced by a fragile uncertainty. Charles redirected his focus from Leo to Maya, his expression now questioning, analytical. He scrutinized her features, the subtle tremor in her hand, the strained corners of her mouth. For the first time since entering the room, he appeared to perceive her as more than an acquisition, but as an individual. "Is that accurate, Maya?" he asked, his voice a bare thread of sound. "Is that how you truly feel?" Maya hesitated. Her gaze flickered between Charles and Leo, a complex tapestry of gratitude and despair woven upon her face. Finally, she offered a slight shake of her head, a single tear escaping to carve a glistening trail down her cheek. "It's immaterial," she whispered, her voice cracking with suppressed emotion. "It simply doesn't matter anymore." Charles reeled, his posture collapsing. The fight seemed to evaporate, leaving behind a man disoriented and lost. He ran a hand through his hair, upsetting its pristine arrangement. "God," he breathed, more to himself than anyone else. "What have I wrought?" He regarded Leo, his eyes reflecting a dawning realization. "You're doing this for her, aren't you?" he asked, a hint of grudging admiration in his tone. "Taking the blame, protecting her." Leo affirmed with a nod, his gaze locked on Charles. Someone needed to. Charles regarded him for a beat, a spark of his former self, the shrewd, calculating businessman returning to his gaze. "And what's your compensation in all of this, Leo?" he pressed, his voice hardening. Beyond the self-satisfaction of playing the night, Leo remained silent, unwilling to voice the truth that resonated between them. Charles, however, seemed to grasp it nonetheless. A slow, knowing smile crept across his face. "Ah," he murmured, barely audible. "I understand." The smile vanished, supplanted by weary resignation. He turned and moved towards the exit. "Just leave," he instructed, his voice weighted with defeat. "Both of you, get out and leave me to wallow in this alone." Separate paths. The ballroom air crackled with suppressed accusations. Charles stood as though petrified, his expensive suit suddenly reading as a flimsy disguise on a terrified boy. The carefully cultivated image of the assuratio had fractured, thin fissures of anxiety now visible. "Charles," Maya began, her voice a mere thread against the backdrop of polite murmurs. "Look at me. Is it the truth?" He deflected, his gaze snagging on a point somewhere past her shoulder. "Maya, please, not here." "When then, Charles?" "When the authorities arrive. When your misdeeds become front-page news. When you've smeared our families, our friends, and me through the mire." His posture collapsed inward. There's an explanation." "An explanation for what? Pilfering funds? Orchestrating Arthur's downfall?" The words felt like barbs ripping from her vocal cords. Each revelation chipped away at the carefully constructed edifice of their life together. Finally, he met her stare, and for the first time, Maya glimpsed not aspiration, but raw, stark pleading. It spiraled out of control. "I meant to set things right. I swear." "Set things right? With what, Charles?" "Further deception? More ill-gotten gains." She recoiled, the ornate ballroom suddenly feeling like a gilded cage. The music, the laughter, the delicate chime of crystal, a jarring chorus against the discord in her heart. "Maya, this isn't the place. To acknowledge reality? Because that's all this is. Seeing with open eyes at last." Drawing a deep breath, the extravagant floral displays suddenly exuded an oppressive, artificial sweetness. This is not a marriage, Charles. It's a flawed transaction, and I'm terminating it." The blood seemed to drain from his features. He stammered, but no sound escaped his lips. She turned, each step away from him heavy with consequence, yet simultaneously, a nascent lightness bloomed within her. Later, she sought refuge with Leo in the library, its dim lighting and the scent of aged leather, a welcome balm. He nursed a golden-hued drink, his brow creased with concern. He was guilty, wasn't he? Leo murmured, his voice a hushed rumble. Maya nodded, sinking into the embrace of a velvet armchair. He confessed, in his own circuitous way. Leo sighed, contemplating the amber depths of his glass. "I am truly sorry, Maya. I wanted to believe in him, for your sake." "I know you did." A wan smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Leo, for being you, for your candor, even when it was difficult." A comfortable quietude enveloped them, one forged in shared history and unspoken sentiment. "So," Leo said, placing his glass on the table, "where do we go from here?" "From here," Maya responded, her voice regaining strength, "I begin anew. And us." His gaze held an intensity that made her breath catch. "Us," she echoed softly. "We will always be kindred spirits, Leo. I cherish that too much to sacrifice it." But she hesitated, reaching for the right words. "Our trajectories, they were never destined for that kind of intersection. What transpired between us, a fleeting moment, beautiful, perhaps ill-advised, but it cannot dictate what lies ahead." He offered a measured nod, his expression a tapestry of understanding and lament. "I get it." Rising, he extended a hand. "Friends." She grasped it, her grip firm and true. "Always." Olivia found her on the terrace, her silhouette outlined against the manicured gardens awash in moonlight. Olivia said softly, looping an arm around her sister's shoulders. "You holding up?" Maya leaned into the familiar comfort. "Not really," she confessed, her voice wavering. But I will be. Olivia squeezed her tight. I know you will. You're the most resilient person I know. They stood in peaceful silence, broken only by the sighing of leaves in the evening breeze. Then, Olivia spoke, her voice laced with quiet certainty. Come on, let's escape this for a bit, and maybe pillage the dessert bar. To hell with Charles, and to hell with this charade of a wedding. Maya laughed, a genuine sound that reached her eyes for the first time all day. I concur. As they walked away, hand clasped in hand, Maya felt a spark of optimism ignite within her. The path ahead was uncertain, undeniably, but its direction was hers to chart. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the realization filled her not with apprehension, but with a quiet sense of burgeoning possibility.
Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, remember that beneath every perfect facade lies a complex reality, and the pursuit of happiness is rarely a straightforward path.